kind of a code, but as the Lord has been bringing me through this wrestle with Jacob and the angel of the Lord, what I realize is that after he's gone through the being honest in his prayers and coming to the Lord with how he truly feels, his fears, his angst, and all of the things, and he wrestled with the angel of the Lord, and he refuses to let go until the angel of the Lord blesses him. Because at this point, he's prevailed. He's prevailed with the world. He's prevailed with men. He's prevailed with God. He's prevailed. And now he's like, Lord, I'm not going to let go until you bless me. And the angel of the Lord changes his name, has striven with men and with the Lord, and he has prevailed. At the very mere surface, it just looks like a changing of the name. But what we don't realize is that it was more to it than that. It was a changing of his identity and what he identified as. It was a changing of how he showed up. It was a changing of his own perspective of who he is versus who God says he is. And I'm not even going to get into that. You could check out the last video or the full video for that. And he came out of that wrestle to meet the very thing that he was fearful of. And what the Lord has been highlighting to me as I've been reading is that Jacob put in all of these controls and all of these protocols. At my job, we have protocols and we have controls. Controls are just things that we put in place to mitigate risk, to try to be proactive about things that may arise throughout the process, and put in controls and things to measure, but also to mitigate how much of an impact those risks will have downstream. And so Jacob, when you read, you see that he had a process. He was going to send his servants and their children, then he was going to send Leah and her children, then he's going to send Rebecca and her children. And prior to the wrestle, you see that he does that as well. When he was sending them out towards Esau, and he was giving them instruction on what to say, and he figured in his mind that he'll put all these things together. He'll send the best animals, goats, calves. He'll send his best of the best in hopes that it will ease Esau's perceivable vengeance upon him. He put all of these things in play to help control the situation, only to find himself, after all of those things, after all of the wrestle, staring his fear in the face. And when he comes to Esau, he finds that it was everything but that. When he first saw Esau, it didn't make his fear any less palpable because Esau was coming with 400 men. And so I can just about imagine what Jacob's heart was doing. It was probably doing flips. But when they locked eyes on one another, the scripture says that Esau ran to him, dipped his head into his neck, kissed him, and they cried. And it was a good cry. And the embrace that Esau embraced him with, he checked in. He wanted to know who all of these people were, Jacob's servants and his children and all of them. It was just the opposite of what Jacob had prepared for. So much so that Esau told him, I have enough. I don't need all of these things. Come with me. But what Jacob decided to do was not go with Esau. And that's a poignant moment in the story. In meditating on this whole wrestle and the whole process, the Lord really showed me that many of the time we can put our hands on a thing and try to come up with a solution and try to come up with the controls and try to come up with our own process and say we're going to do this and that and the other. And I joke about it often because I am the queen of building scenarios in my head and then preparing for them in my mind, preparing to avoid them. That could be a strength, but then that could also be a weakness because it takes up a lot of space, a lot of time, a lot of energy to devise these scenarios in your head and then devise a plan and then be fearful of the scenario that you have in your head, which is what is causing you to really go in on these controls that you're putting in place. When all the Lord is really asking us to do is bring it to him. Bring the fear, bring the issues of the heart, bring it all to him because there's no plan like the Lord's plan. And that's what I learned. I learned from reading this, especially as I am going through. I learned that we can waste a whole lot of time trying to keep our hands in the midst of a thing that the Lord is telling us to take our hands off and give it to him. When Jacob was in there pouring out his heart, the Lord heard him, but he had already had this all considered. When Jacob was wrestling with the angel of the Lord knew what was happening, where all of this was coming from, where all of this angst and all of this desperation to be blessed. What Jacob was really saying is, Lord, help me. I'm here, I'm scared, I'm afraid, help me, and I'm not letting go until you help me. The Lord already had this considered. The Lord already knew. The Bible tells us that the Lord knows our end from our beginning. He knows what is ahead of us already. And he's already prepared that. And he's just asking us to trust his process. Because Jacob went through all of the angst. And I think the truth of the matter is, with all that he has done, with all the trickery and all the scheming, it is understandable that being sent back and confronting the very one that you schemed on, it is understandable that that would be a bit of a fearful situation because Jacob doesn't have mommy now. And when you've been prepared to handle things a certain way and not fully prepared to handle the consequences or not aware, it could feel overwhelming. It could feel scary. And so what Jacob was feeling was very understandable. The anxiety around that was very understandable and relatable. But what the Lord is asking us to do is give that to him. Scripture says that the Lord is working together for the good, those things. And he's also watching over his word to perform it. Jacob had a word that was given to him. He had a promise that was bestowed upon him, that was given to his father and his father's father. And so the Lord is watching over that word. Not only is he working together for the good, those things, for those that are called and love him, but he's also watching over his promise in order to perform it. And when you're in his promise and you come to him with your honesty, he hears you. Scripture tells us that the prayers of the righteous availeth much. He hears the prayers of the righteous. He heard Jacob. And as a result, you see that what Jacob thought was going to be the imminent end or meeting with Esau, it was vastly different. But I think the poignant part of that story is that when Esau invited Jacob and his family to come with him, Jacob declined and Jacob went on his way. Oftentimes, we forget that forgiveness doesn't always mean we go back, we come back together. It doesn't always have to be a situation where there's bad blood. It doesn't always have to be a situation where you go your way, I go my way, and we never talk to each other again. It does not always mean reconciliation in that way. You can be reconciled in a new way, or you won't necessarily be reconciled at all, but there's forgiveness there, and there's ease there, and there's peace there. And I think that was also a lesson, whether or not it was Esau or Jacob that drove that this is a great moment. We're coming together. We're good. We're over it. This is a great moment, but we can't go back down that path. Or whether it was the Lord who says, you can forgive. Forgiveness is required. And I'm going to keep you blameless in that way. But sometimes we have to forgive and keep moving forward. And oftentimes we get caught up in wanting things to be the way they used to be and going back to where things were normal and easy. And oftentimes that's where we find and we meet disappointment because you can't undo the things that's already been done. That's not what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness isn't about undoing the things that have already been done. Forgiveness is about accepting the fact that they happened, not allowing that to change your heart posture and how you move forward in grace and in love, but also moving with wisdom, understanding that you can't always go back that way. And I appreciated that very much so in this season of having and praying to the Lord for a heart that loves more easily, forgives more quickly, and pours out grace just as the Lord pours out grace upon me.